I really want to just talk briefly about culture in the workplace. And I want to use Providence Human Capital, which is the organization I come from, as an example of bringing in culture into the workspace. So we embarked on a journey in 2016. We embarked on a journey of putting in culture into our workspace. So we deliberately, and the word deliberately, please keep that in mind, we deliberately decided that objectivity doesn't really work. I think a lot of people in psychology here would get this, that most of us are just subjective beings, all of us actually. So objectivity doesn't really work, but the workplace is meant to be very objective. The workplace has rules and standards and SOPs that are meant to make us all objective. But we come with being African, we come with being Christian, we come with all sorts of cultures. So our cultures certainly include and encompass our religion, and it encompasses the way we grow up. And most of us have grown up in a certain religion, and that religion really then looks at how the culture Yawuno comes into play. So we then said, okay, this is what we are going to do. You bring your whole self to the workplace. Do not come to the workplace and then by the door, you stop being who you are, then you become an employee of Providence or INSCO or Delta or whatever company you work for. When you come in, bring your whole self. So there's a saying, I think South Africans say, Unu is, I am because you are. So I argued with a lot of people, I don't even know what that means. You're talking about language. I said, I know I am because you are. I don't really get it. I need you to unpack that for me because it doesn't mean anything in my language when you say that. Unu kwandiri, which is Ubuntu in Ndebele, basically just means ndine character yakanaka. Ndinongonzi. What is so interesting is ukona murungu ka anzi ayo ndaona murungu ukona munhu mutema ndaona munhu. So there's this inner being chiri mauri chisoul cheche chiri mauri that describes who you are. So we then embarked on a journey. We said we cannot ignore the fact that the world is made up of different geographical sides, which is your north, your global north, your global south, your global east, and your global west. And I think when you look at it from the context, even right now with what's happening in America, what's happening in the UK, what happens in India, in China, and in Africa. So Africa geographically is in your global south, and we are very relational people. We are very exciting people, like Gladys has just said. We love people. I think that's why we're colonized very easily. We accept anybody, anything. We embrace people. We bring them in our homes. That's what we do in the workplace as well. And then if you look at the global east, you've got your Indians, your Asians and everything. And those people are very spiritual. So if you look at the global south, east, most of the Buddhism, all these kismets, this whole cultural Eastern religion, it normally is housed there. And then if you look at your north, your global north, you see your Nordic countries, the Switzerland of this world, the timekeepers. I'm the worst timekeeper in the world, and I thank God I'm African. I tell people Africa doesn't care about time, so sorry I was late. So that's your global north, and that's the southernness I'm going to talk about, and why in the workplace you need to embrace your whole self, including those other less dominant features of who you are. And then on the west, you've got your global west, which is your Americas, your Western countries, and the cowboys and action. I mean, Trump right now is representing the global west at its best, because it's just action, action, action. And disclosure, I do like Trump. So when we decided to embark on that journey, we then said being African is your inner self, which is your moral compass. So when you are now inside your inner compass and your moral compass, What does that mean? Please, can I also have some water? So what does that mean? It means that is the compass that draws you. So Hunhu wako ndo uri pasend. Your global north, south, east and west are just parts of who you are. So bringing culture into the workplace, Hunhu wako kaunza kubasa, it's very important. What we have realized though is Providence ended up being like a zoo, because Raja kunzi shumba, busy, makadi. So we said no. Because of course it has its own negative aspects to it. So the culture in the workplace, bringing that culture in the workplace and saying, how do we navigate a space where it's definitely not African cultural, where you can't be African. A culture, a company was created by certain individuals, by certain people, in a certain format. It's a very male-dominated enterprise, which talks about certainly not socialism, certainly not about ngatite mushandra pamwe, certainly not about those things. A company is created to make money for its shareholders. That's the essence why we start our companies. So now we are trying to bring in a culture, mushandra pamwe, all these things in the workplace. How do you navigate that? So we went back on a journey. We started a program in Nzirumuko, which we do every morning. We borrowed that from our religious context. Yekuti Rumuko, Maxen, I think the Methodists do that. Maxen vananomuka, wenda kunonamata vari pamwe chete. They share ideas. We said let's have a Rumuko every morning. So it's not a meeting. So we meet every morning. Every single morning when we open our doors, we do what we call Rumoko. People meet there, they've got their ideas. Every single person has the same platform. But of course, I don't normally attend, because when I'm there, I know my role. What would then happen is people are then not as open as they would be. They'll say things that they know I want to hear. So my team meets on their own, but that's every single morning. Then after that, what we do is what we then call those team meetings, where we are saying, what does it mean? Yes, it's teamwork, but let's look at it differently. I am because you are. Ndakazonyatso explain Robunza, I am because you are. Zvikureva kuti iwewe hauzi munhu kana vanhu vasingakuti uri munhu. Kuti unzi uri munhu, pane munhu atoti uyu musikana uyu ane munhu uyu. And hanzi munhu because ane hunhu. Saka kunzi ane munhu chaiye uyu, iwa munhu, mwana uya munhu, handiti. Saka that's how I am because you are. Kuti hanzi warwo iwe wakuitwa the same person. Saka tinozogara pasi totaura kuti, okay, imimi, bring the whole self. The religious part comes into play. We then say, what does the Bible say? For those who belong to the Christian religion. And then somebody says, no, it says, I work as if I work unto the Lord. So how come parikubiwa pakambani panapa? Kana tese tiri maKristu, sei parikubiwa pakambani panapa? Sei vanhu vari kutiza basa. If we really work as if we are working unto the Lord, and we are saying we are Christians, why then do we have all these problems? Why is there corruption in this company, in this country, when we are all professing to be Tine Ubuntu? It's so overused now, we're like, should we be using that? Because everybody uses it. So we ask those questions. Why are you saying you are this person? So we do what we call reflection as well. We teach people in the office to reflect. So we then say, what did you do? The workplace. How many customers called? How many were happy with what you did? When you get home, did you ask yourself, why would you do that? So we train that. We then meet, we've got a learning center called Kuona Learning Center, a center for integral enterprise. And all we are trying to establish is, let's practice what we preach. Language, if you come into our offices, you see pane pakanyorwa kunzi chitubu cheungwaru, chitubu cheruzivo, chitubu cheutano. Those are our departments. Chitubu chebudiriro. We are saying, we decided, we sat as a company and we said, what are we going to do? Let's rename. Let's talk about things that we understand. A lot of our folks were being sent away. Anoshandira murungu ataura language. You're talking about language. Very, very important. Murungu amvunza kuti, you know, excuse me, and then the guy says, what? He's not being rude, but kuvarungu it's being rude. But he's not being rude. It's because it's the medium of exchange ya taura, your language. Saka language is very important. So we encourage speaking in Shona. We encourage speaking in Ndebele. We encourage just speaking the language that you're comfortable with, especially when you're trying to explain something. Whether we're hearing, whether muchi. But remember, English is the medium of communication in a workplace. So you are in a dilemma. You are contradicting yourself. You are now in this space where the coaching comes into play. Because now I'm concerned about kune vanhu vari kuuya vachiti ndisoko ndisamaita ndimatemai vauya vese havasi kushanda matemai tovaita sei apa matingatidaidzanai nemutupo manje. Real case story. We had a hearing of someone who wasn't working, and avanga vari vanoera gumbo vanonzi vanachi madyira vari kuita hearing. Apa taencourage zvekutaura nemutupo. Mudzimai ari kuitiswa hearing akuti shuwa here madyira mungandidaro. So we have to balance. We have to balance. And the future is unpredictable. It is something that we cannot talk about now because we don't know what's going to happen. We woke up one day and there was COVID. And guess what it did? It also changed our culture. Yakachinja unhu wedu, ushona wedu, kuvisitirana. Right now, kubata munhu ruoko becomes a bit difficult. Why? Because cultures are dynamic. Sabundi morese munhu neruoko mazuano, honestly, I find it very difficult, especially in the afternoons, because ndikuchoti kondikazobatira chimwe chirwere. That's how culture is dynamic. Unlike the biological, mutations, where it takes billions of years, and stem by dinosaur, I think so. And then we were what, and then we were what, and then millions of years or whatever. Cultures change faster. The internet, everything, the things that we're just being told is also shaping our culture. So what then happens when social media comes? And there's a very beautiful song, but it's a bit too long because our kids want instant everything. How do we navigate that? And I think Being African, the institution, is here to help us, to just remind us of those little traces, Zinosara, after a pandemic, after a revolution, after a war. We are saying an institution like Being African is what then stays behind with its institutional memory. So as Providence, we're saying we want to support this because we understand the documentation is very important. Someone said, and I don't believe it, but they said it, if you want to hide something from an African, put it in a book. It's been said. So we're saying Being African is going to put things in a book, but also teach us how to read. They are going to put things on the internet, but also teach us how to watch without being taken by TikTok. Because once I'm scrolling and I'm enjoying something else, I'm not going to look at it. So this institution is so important in its origins, in everything that they've explained. why we need them to be there. Because most of us have no time, have no energy, have no even interest in being African. And being African in the workplace and being African in the world also believes the language that we're talking about. Culture is so meshed up with other things. It's so meshed up with other people. You marry a white person, you marry an Indian, you are married to an Indian. That's a culture for both your children. What does it mean? How is being African going to navigate that with us? How is being African going to navigate this terrain that changes like that every day? But it works. It works so much that I was in New York and we're in a little camera thing, cannot drive, those guys with the two of us, me and my friend. And he was running so much, actually, I started speaking in Shona. My way, please, Mirai. For some reason, I couldn't speak in English. But he didn't hear me. He didn't hear us, so he was even speeding more. But language is so important. And I'll rest. Thank you.